Twipsy. What the heck was this show? So back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the usage of 3D in cartoons was a hot new thing, and it started to pop up more and more in animated series. Twipsy was one of those shows. Created by Javier Mariscal and originally a mascot for the Expo 2000 World Fair, it's about a creature called Twipsy who lives in cyberspace, or the internet, and delivers emails from one person to another along with many other messengers. Twipsy clashes with the real world once a boy named Nick is accidentally sent into cyberspace. Together with his sister Liz and his friend Albert, they befriend Twipsy and explore cyberspace while dealing with mundane issues like sending an email to the wrong address, trying to take care of a dog, or being in love with someone. Twipsy is a goofy character and he constantly gets in trouble in the real world because he is really impulsive and doesn't think before he does anything. Kind of a fish out of water. Twipsy aired in 1999 and was actually broadcast in over 100 countries, but for some reason, very few people seem to remember the series or the character, and there isn't much content or information about him. So why has this show become so oblivious? Well, simply put, I don't think the show is that good. Despite being a well-designed mascot for its initial purpose, the animated Twipsy series falls flat. Let me explain. After rewatching Twipsy, I noticed that this show, like many others from my childhood, hasn't aged that well. The plots are really uninspired and there's nothing funny, clever, or surprising about them. It's just boring. Like in this one episode, Twipsy is being chased by a monster called Data Eater until Albert goes to cyberspace and trades Data Eater a piece of paper to leave them alone. He claimed that the paper had some really interesting data in it when it actually had not. That's it. That's the whole episode.
P.S. There is no such thing as a formula to beat the Johnson-Pierce combination. I just pretended there was.
That has got to be one of the laziest, dumbest plots I've ever seen in any show ever. Then there's an episode where Twipsy eats too much food, gets fat and sick, until they just decide to send him back to cyberspace. Again, this is barely even a story, and it's not even funny. A show like this could really use strong characters to derive humor from, because if your characters are funny and relatable enough, you can have them work in pretty much any setting, and the stories almost write themselves. But the characters in Twipsy are just cardboard cutouts. Nick is a dumb jock, Albert is a shy nerd, and Liz is a rebellious little girl. This wouldn't be a problem if the characters actually developed over the course of the show, but they don't. Because of the fact that they're just generic archetypes, they aren't great enough by themselves, they need development, but they get none. This show could have also used some recurring overarching villain that tries to destroy the world or something. That would have given the characters some motivation and made for better, more interesting stories. Once you watch a few of these episodes, it becomes painfully obvious as to why Twipsy was forgotten so quickly. The show had nothing going for it, and I'm pretty sure the only thing that got it spread into so many countries was the now horribly outdated CG gimmick. I guess back then network executives thought that it was gonna be the next big thing and decided to just go with it. I mean, they weren't wrong, computer animation dominates the realm of cartoons these days, but Twipsy just wasn't one of the successful ones. When I was a kid watching this show back in the 2000s, the things that I liked best about Twipsy were the catchy electronic music and the scenes where people travel through the information highway. Those seemed cool to me at the time. The show was an audio-visual banger and a good amount of runtime was spent in these segments on the information highway. I gotta admit, they're still kinda fun. There's not much else to say. Twipsy is so terribly bland, it's no wonder people forgot about it. The show definitely had potential. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the internet was still a relatively new thing to the masses, and Twipsy could have been the perfect opportunity to teach people about how it worked and how to use it properly. To educate children about internet etiquette. I feel like the producers and writers didn't really know what they should do with the character. I'm not sure how much involvement Mariscal himself had with the show, as he seems to be an artist and a graphical designer first and foremost. If he was heavily involved, it makes sense that Twipsy's strong points lie in its visual style. The show looks and sounds good, and it has a nice original style going on, mixing 2D and 3D beautifully together. Whatever the case, the characters and story simply weren't good enough, but the visual look of the Twipsy series is something commendable, at least for its time. The show works better as a piece of art than a collection of stories.
No, it's all meaningless. Just ones and zeros. It doesn't add up to anything.